We've seen protests in London last night. Started off quite peacefully, many people have said, and then they did descend into something a little less peaceful, I've got to say, which saw multiple police officers hurt. The essence of it is the situation in Rafah. There's a huge social media campaign now, all eyes on Rafah. Tens of millions of people have interacted with it, Aaron Bastani. Huge strength of feeling about what's going on there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the scenes coming out of Rafah are absolutely horrific. I don't know if your viewers and listeners have seen some of those images. I mean, like things from a horror movie involving children, frankly. I don't need to go any further.
You're talking about the dad that came out carrying a child that had been decapitated, basically.
Yeah, and it seems that was probably from shrapnel. So there was Israel, its Air Force dropped two bombs, 17-kilo bombs, on a building, and then they then claimed that then blew up because there were weapons stored there. They didn't know that, which is strange because they'd previously said that location was one of the sites where there had been attacks launched on October the 7th. So either they knew there were weapons there or they didn't. But anyway, around 50 innocent people died. And what Israel says is, well, they weren't in the safe zone. That is rewriting the laws of conflict. You know, you don't just say, well, civilians have died because they weren't in the safe zone. That's suddenly OK. No, they are not legitimate targets. They're not legitimate collateral damage. And as I've said so many times, every single child in particular that is killed by the IDF in Gaza is a recruiting sergeant for Hamas. This will echo for decades, and it's just an appalling thing to see.
Let me ask you about this, because there's some people that refer to the images that you've just described, and they will say, oh, Pallywood, it's all propaganda, they're all fake. What would you say back to that?
It's just nonsense. I mean, we know that tens of thousands of people have been killed, and I would invite you to at least search some of the terms you mentioned, and you will see the images and come up to your own conclusions. And I think, frankly, millions of people who weren't particularly invested in this have seen what's happened in Rafah, and hence this graphic on Instagram has gone absolutely wild.
Yeah, tens of millions of people have seen and engaged that. Peter Hitchens.
Well, the bombing and bombardment of populated areas is flat out wrong. It's always been wrong, and no civilised country should do it, and yet we do. And people are prepared to look the other way. If these scenes that have also, I have to say, taken place under the bombardment of Western countries such as the United States and Britain in Iraq, and of Russia in Aleppo, about which there was some protest because it was Russia some years ago. If these scenes were now taking place in European cities, I think we would understand the horror with which they're regarded in the Arab and Muslim world rather better. I don't want that to happen because, and one of the reasons I constantly urge people against the whole idea of supporting bombarded populated areas is the more that we do it, the more that eventually we risk the danger of it coming to us. I think we really have to realise as civilised countries, this is not something that we can do. It is always wrong. It cannot be justified by military or political terms. And I would add that for those who, like me, who try and make some sort of case for the continued existence of Israel, it makes that task incredibly hard.
Look, I know there's a huge sense of emotion around this topic. There'll be divided opinions at home. I'm absolutely sure there'll be many of you getting in touch saying, well, Michelle, why aren't they releasing the hostages and then much of this will stop? I can hear you shouting that. But look, whatever side of the fence you're on, we can all conclude that actually what everyone
really wants is a peaceful
solution. If it's about 2 seconds long,
very fast. The idea that this action is going to get the hostages released seems to me to be discredited by experience. That is not happening.
There you go.
No, it doesn't work on those terms. You cannot fight Hamas by bombing them.